It's time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the Property Podcast. It is Two Fat Ladies, episode 88. Wow, we're really chugging through them now. Rob, hello, good morning.
Good morning, I am here.
Is it dark where you are?
Is it dark? No, it's light-ish, a little bit overcast, can't complain too much.
Oh, that's the beauty of an advanced time zone, where I get up very early and you wake up at a civil hour to record this.
It's true. You can have a whole podcast done and dusted while most people are still rolling out of bed, so that's got to feel pretty good.
It does, but if you hear my stomach rumbling, because I've got a very powerful microphone, you know why.
But in that case, we better get on with the episode then, because we don't want to keep you from your cornflakes, and we've got a lot to...
We do not.
Got a lot to fit in. Let's start with some news this week, which we almost didn't have a news story this week. It seemed like a very, very slow news week, but in the depths of the Telegraph never lets us down. In the depths of their website, we managed to find a story which is quite interesting. Rob, this is something that is actually reinforcing something that you've been saying for quite a while.
Yeah, it's a really interesting article and it's visual as well. So definitely go to the show notes. This week's show notes, if you want to make a note of it, is thepropertyhub.net/property mastermind. So if you go to that link, you can find this article. But what they've done is they've mapped out where the percentage of homes across the UK are built, where it's very densely populated and where it's more sparsely populated. You can have a look for yourself, no surprise. London, Birmingham, the Northwest are all very densely populated, and then there's other areas not so much. That's not really where the shock is or the news story is for me. What's interesting is they talk about the lack of property being built. Now, 10 years ago, the government put out a report called the Barker Report. And the Barker Report stated that we need to build 250,000 new homes each year to keep up with demand. Not to reduce demand, just to keep up. And that was 10 years ago. In the last 10 years, the amount of times we've hit that number? 0. Big fat 0. Last year, to give you an idea, we built 109,000 homes. 109. Nowhere near, less than half. And let's face it, the last 12 months hasn't exactly been a bad time for property. And it's less than half. That shows where the real challenge is. But a comment I've frequently made is, as we haven't hit that number for the last 10 years, then strictly speaking, it should be revised upwards. And the Royal Institute of British Architects, a team of economists there, they've looked at this and they now believe that the UK means that we need to build 300 to 330 homes now to keep level with demand. It's like before, I have no idea how they're going to hit it, but that's the challenge that we have. And that's why property prices go up over the long term, because there's supply and demand. Lots of people want property, but there's not enough property being built. That's the challenge we have. In the last 12 months, our population's grown by 500,000. So that gives you an idea. So the population's growing. We want housing, but we haven't got it, and we build nowhere near enough. So, Rob, I'm sure in a few years' time, we'll be talking again how it's been revised upwards even more so. What are we going to do? I have no ideas.
And nor does anyone else, it seems. And there's a very scary graph on there that shows how planning approvals absolutely dropped off a cliff in 2006 and have started to come back a little bit, but still not really anywhere near. This is something that we've touched on a few times over the last 80-odd episodes, and we've sort of talked about some suggestions that there have been for how to increase supply, but really nothing on anything like the scale that is needed. And as you say, that number is only going to keep going up until something is done. So worth taking a look at this article because it is really interesting. The map is quite insightful as well. So do get over to the show notes at thepropertyhub.net/property mastermind, where you'll find this week's show notes. So this week, if you're listening to this episode on the day it comes out, which you should do, of course, then yesterday we did a webinar and hopefully you joined us for that. Thank you very much if you did. On that webinar, we were talking about the Property Hub Summit event that we've got in January. So this is something that we mentioned on last week's podcast. We mentioned it in passing, didn't give too much away, but we finally let the cat out of the bag yesterday. So this is a full day event that we're putting on in London on Sunday, the 4th of January. It's just going to be us and 20 people spending the whole day going over each other's plans for the year ahead and getting into some really deep strategy, because the podcast is great for general information, but what you can't have is us recording an episode especially for you and what you need to do to hit your property goals. That is something that we can do with a small group of people in person. So that's what we decided to do. So this webinar, it was a lot of fun. We're really grateful to you if you joined us. And if you weren't able to make it and you're not quite sure what we're talking about, then you might want to find out a little bit more about what this event is. And if there are any places left, it might have sold out by now. We don't know because we're recording this in the future. So if you do want to find out more about that, go to thepropertyhub.net/summit. That is SUMMIT, not summit, to find out more about what that's all about.
Fantastic. Can I come?
Oh, well, I did say it might have sold out, so you're going to have to get over there quick and find out.
Okie dokie. Well, I've got it in my calendar just in case you let me come. I'm sure I will be there. I'll speak to Rob afterwards. So this really does tie into our topic of the week, Rob, which is why you need a property mastermind group.
Yeah, so the idea for the Property Hub Summit, it came from the concept of mastermind groups, and it is basically going to be a full-day mastermind led by us. As we talked about on the webinar last night, we hope that it's also going to be the starting point for the people who come along, not just to talk to us, but to meet each other and go away and form their own mastermind groups off the back of it. But what is a mastermind group? So we've just been talking about it for a few minutes as if you know what it is, but you might not. I think that the term mastermind group first came from the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I'm pretty sure that's who coined the term in a book that I actually didn't enjoy that much, but that's a story for another day. But he came up with it. And the best definition that I could find comes from a site called growandimprove.com. And it defines it as a small group that you meet with for the purpose of reinforcing growth and success while offering support to one another. That's quite a nice definition, I think. Growth and success and supporting each other to achieve that growth and success is really what a mastermind group is all about. And that's just some of the reasons why they are such a valuable thing and why we thought we'd dedicate this episode to telling you why you need a mastermind group and how you can go about setting one up yourself.
Wow, Rob, before I go any further, I didn't know you didn't like Think and Grow Rich, and I've kept that as one of my dark secrets because so many people love it. So many people love that book. And I, when I read it, didn't really get into it, but I've had to keep it to myself because I thought, everyone's going to think bad of me. I found someone, so that's so cool. I've gone public as well. I've gone public on Think and Grow Rich. So
I hope you're not just trying to make me feel better.
No, I'm not. We'll be shunned together. We'll be sent to an island together on this one. We should do more work together, Rob.
Yeah.
So, seems like we have a lot in common. But right, let's get right back on track and discuss why property masterminds are so valuable. First of all, you're going to get lots of impartial advice, brainstorming sessions, if you will. So however much you think you know about property, you can always at some point get stuck or your progress can slow down. And it's useful to speak to other people who may be just in the zone at that time or have better experience or just have come across that issue or challenge before. That can really give you a few tips that you've not really thought about before that can really help you accelerate your success. So that impartial advice, they're not emotionally involved in your situation. So they can just give you third-party advice without the emotion. And often you'll find because the emotion is taken out of the situation, it's very, very good advice. Of course, with masterminds as well, is the accountability. So when you're with a group of people and you say you're going to do something or achieve something, you're going to have to go back to that group and update them on their progress. If you've done nothing towards it, then you're going to feel a bit of a loser. It helps you to move forward. Even if you don't finish it, it'll still help you do some of it because you don't want to go back and say, just sat on my bum this week. It's not going to look good. You're going to start feeling bad about yourself. So that accountability factor is actually very, very powerful. Leading on to that, it then gives you that motivation. Getting on a call with a group of other successful, like-minded people every week or month or quarter, however often you do it, and hearing everything that they've achieved since you last spoke is a great way to make you feel either good about what you're doing or bad because you haven't done enough. But either way, that's that motivation to push you on.
Yeah, and as well as hearing about what people are doing and using it for motivation, you can also use it to share ideas. So in a very nice way, you can nick ideas that are working for other people. So you can see what strategies other people are using and see if you can apply them to yourself. as well as just kind of observing what other people are doing. If you need a specific idea for a problem you're facing or something that you want to achieve, the most creative suggestions often come from people who are doing something quite different from you, so they've got a fresh perspective. So if you're only ever talking to people who have the same view as you, then you're probably just going to keep hearing the same opinions over and over again. But if you are Mr. Staunch buy and hold, and you're in a group with someone who's doing flips and always looking to exit the market and come back in again and all that kind of thing, you might not want to copy what they're doing because it might not be for you, but you can bet that their perspective is going to be very different from yours. So they might have an idea, which is going to be really helpful. Finally, the final element that makes these mastermind groups so useful is just the moral support aspect, which shouldn't be underestimated, because as property investors, we're all pushing ourselves to do something that most people don't do and most people don't really understand. And we've talked before about how it can be quite a lonely thing. And, we set up the property hub so there's a place where everyone can talk to each other. But having that support is really, really valuable. So masterminds, we've talked about them as a formal group, and we're going to show you how to set up one of these groups. But they don't have to be formal. So I've got a small group of people where we regularly email or call each other for ideas, advice, and reality checks and that kind of thing. It's very valuable, even though there is no formal time where we say, okay, every Monday at 3:00, we're going to sit down and do this. So it doesn't have to be formal, but they can be formal. And the advantage of that is it's great for accountability, because you know that you're going to have another meeting in a certain amount of time, by which time you're going to need to have achieved whatever you said you were going to achieve. So let's take the case of a formal mastermind group. And if you like the idea, we've just been talking about it for 10 minutes. We don't want to just leave you thinking, yep, that's a great idea, but how do I do it? Let's tell you how you actually do set up a group of your own if you want to.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to just tell you how fantastic it is and then you go away to ponder the thought. Let's get straight into it. First of all, let's think about the group size. We found that the best groups tend to be sort of 4 to 8 people. 3, there's not enough energy or dynamic in a group. 4, you start to get it. I've been in a group of 5 before. And when you're in 5, if one person can't make it for whatever reason, which shouldn't be the case, you should be committed, but if one person can't, then 4 still feels like it's pretty good. But there was a time when a few people couldn't make it and there was just 2 or 3 of us, and that really didn't have the same dynamic. It didn't have the same energy in the group. 4 to 8, but ideally probably more like 5 to 8. And as I've said, these people have to be really committed to the group. With that, keep their egos under control. There's nothing worse than a know-it-all in the group who preaches to everyone and can't take any criticism or feedback themselves. They're just there to make themselves feel good and talk at people. You don't want any of those people in your group. That's important. Remember, if people have different experiences and skill sets, that actually can improve things. So I know some masterminds, it's people who all do the same thing. And while I'm sure you'll get better at that thing you're trying to do, wherever that may be, if it's sourcing or refurbs, but actually if you've got a mix and people with all different skill sets, that can really help boost your knowledge base. Even if it's something you're not going to do yourself, I'm sure there's bits of it you can take and build into your own strategy. However, the main thing is, and it comes back to that attitude again, is that all the people in the group share the same values and goals, and they're all trying to better themselves and have that same end result. It may not be the same financial end result, but the end result is to improve and hit their goals and their targets. You want like-minded people who do different things, have different skill sets. It's maybe easier said than done, but that's what you want. Once you've found your people, you want to be looking to meet on a regular basis. Now, you can do this weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever the group wants. And it can be in person. I've never done that personally, but I've heard very, very good things. So that's why we're doing it in the summit. Or on the phone or Skype. It's up to you. I've done it fortnightly before and it worked okay. I'm really busy, so I probably would have appreciated monthly. But it just depends. And the group was as well. And I think that's why the attendance wasn't always where it should be. Whereas monthly was probably a better number for us to commit to. But you know your own schedules, you know where you're at. If you think a Skype call weekly is doable or a monthly meetup is for you, you can decide. Make sure you talk to the group about how frequently you meet up, because whereas you may have good freedom in your time, others may not, and vice versa. So speak to the group as a whole and get a commitment that whatever you set, everyone will turn up to.
Yeah, I've been part of a weekly mastermind before, and that was a bit much. I think Fortnightly or monthly are quite effective. Quarterly can be great if it's something in person where it's impractical to get together any more often. But we kind of skipped a step here. How do you actually find people to form a mastermind with in the first place? Well, we've already talked about how we hope that the summit is going to kick off a mastermind too, because you're going to spend all day with a group of people. There's nothing like meeting face to face to get something like that going. Even away from the summit, maybe there are people you meet at the Property Hub meetups that we do. Then there's the Property Hub itself. So this is a big group. There's something like 1,800 people in there now. Don't be afraid to just post something saying that you want to get something going and say what you want to get out of it. You can just post on there, give a bit of guidance about the kind of people that you're looking for in the group, when you're looking to meet, whether it's going to be in person or on the phone, how often, that kind of thing, and see what comes back. I think you'll be surprised with the response that you get. If there's people that you already know, then there's no reason not to talk to them as well. Maybe you've been meeting people in the past locally or at networking events or whatever. Just ask and see if they're up for it. You only need to find, as we've said, 4 or 5 people. And if you need some help explaining to them what the concept is, and they're just like, what, a mastermind group? Wasn't that some kind of game show? Then you just send them this episode and give them an overview, and hopefully it will get them sufficiently excited to join you on this.
Okay, so now we know what type of ethos you need to have within a group. Now you know how to find the people. But how do you actually go about, what's the nuts and bolts? How do you set up and run a successful mastermind? Well, the first one is appoint a leader, someone to take charge. It's important that there's one person in the group taking responsibility, moving the sessions on, assuring, the agenda or the structure is kept to, and keeps the meeting on track. It's probably best that that's the same person every week, so then they can grow into that role as well. Because remember, the person who does that probably hasn't led a mastermind before. They may be a natural leader outside the mastermind, but they've never led a mastermind. So they can grow into that role. Whether that's you, great. But if that's not you, that person can be super effective. Again, I refer back to that egos point before. So it's not their mastermind. They're just leading the group. But to have a leader, it just stops it being bitty. You'll find that the flow will run a lot better. So I've been a mastermind before, and I'm often quite happy to take lead in situations, but I wasn't the leader, and I quite enjoyed it, just sitting back and letting someone else do the work. Having a leader in the group can be really, really useful. And I think it's actually a must, because you'll find the group won't run efficiently without one. Next up, establish a clear purpose and establish ground rules. It's all well and good just coming in and having a bit of a chat, but have a group target. I've been in a mastermind before where it says, take it to this level. So this is where we want to get to. I know there's other mastermind groups that have similar targets. So you're at this point now and we're going to get to here, or you're going to get to this point, or you're going to grow your portfolio by X, whatever it may be. It's completely up to you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that every person's goal is the same, but generally the mission of the group is to grow, develop, whatever it may be. But have that purpose. Otherwise, the group will never really feel like it's going anywhere, and then will probably lose its momentum and fall apart. Make sure you have that purpose. And then the ground rules as well. How is it going to be run? What needs to be done every episode? What will the structure be? What's people's commitments? Are they allowed to miss them? If they do, how many are they missed before they're kicked out? I know it sounds quite harsh talking about kicking people out, but attendance actually is one of the big things. And if people stop attending, it can disrupt the flow of a group. So you have to be pretty quick. And one of the rules that people have used in the successful masterminds before is a 3 strikes rule. 3 strikes and you're out. If you missed 3 at any point, not in a row, then you're just out because you haven't shown the commitment. You can be more strict or you can be less strict. It's up to you. But I think attendance, you'll find, is a big part of this. And then confidentiality. Let's face it, the stuff you're going to be talking about will often be personal. So you don't want it broadcast everywhere. So make sure that everyone in the group is aware of that. It's something you will commit to. And if you do, the people in the group are more willing to be open and share stuff. So by having that as a rule, as a structure, you'll find people will probably give more in each session.
Okay, so let's have a look at how to actually structure each session. If you're going to be the leader, how should you tell people how things are going to work? Well, it's important that each session has a structure to make sure that the time is being used productively. Everyone's going to be busy. Everyone's giving up a certain amount of their time to do this. And so you want to make sure that you're not just sitting around nattering, which is very nice, but people are doing this because they want to actually make some progress. You can structure it in any way you like, as long as there is a structure. But a useful format that I've used before in other groups and worked really well is to open up with a really short update from each member, no more than a minute each, about what they've achieved since the last session. So just to get things moving, and the accountability aspect. So if someone said last time they're going to have achieved a certain thing, like maybe go and do 10 viewings or get 3 quotes for something, have they done it? They can tell you in that opening update. After that, one member can take the hot seat. So you can have a different member in the hot seat each time. And this is where they can explain a challenge that they're facing and ask for suggestions. This works really nicely. It's a great opportunity if there's something that you're coming up against that you just can't quite figure out, to put it to a group of people who can come up with a load of ideas for you. The important thing is that the person in the hot seat prepares in advance so they can clearly explain what the situation is and what they need help with. In property, I think this is particularly important because often it's the case where things get quite complicated. So they'll be in a certain financial situation and they'll have a certain amount of money here, a certain amount of equity here, a certain goal. And it can get really hard if someone just sort of says it all to you in 30 seconds and goes, what do you think? If they can prepare and maybe circulate something in advance with some notes, that'll be really helpful because it means that people can actually understand more effectively what's going on and be able to help better. That's the hot seat portion. And then after that, if there's any time left, depending on how long the session is, you can just have a discussion around a certain topic that's agreed in advance. So you could talk about financing and what everyone's doing there and what kind of mortgages people are using. You could talk about how to sell a property. You could talk about tips for sourcing deals. You can talk about anything, but you can just agree that topic in advance and have a discussion around that. To end the session, like you started with an update, you can finish with a quick statement from everyone about what they'll achieve before the next session. So again, it's the accountability aspect. Say what you're going to achieve before the next session. The opening update next time, you'll get to say whether you've done it or not. The overall length of the session to fit all that in, or if you choose a different structure to fit in whatever that is, the overall length will depend on how many members there are. Because obviously the more people there are, the more people who need to have a chance to have their say and get their ideas across. So the bigger the group, the longer the session probably. In general, somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes is probably about right. If you're doing something weekly, fortnightly or monthly. If you're going for something quarterly, you might even want to get together in person every quarter or even every 6 months and make a whole day of it or a half day of it. But for anything else, probably 60 to 90 minutes is about right. Anything more than that, and it becomes very difficult for people to schedule. So often it feels quite intense and it feels like there's a lot to pack in, but that's a good thing. It's good to have a really exhausting hour and at the end of that feel like you've made a load of progress.
To keep the group focused when they are in that session, on that call, in that meetup, whether it's face-to-face, phone, Skype, wherever, circulate an agenda the day before the call. So whoever is that group leader that we discussed before, they will send a quick note of what's planned, what's going to be discussed, and who, if anyone, is going to be in the hot seat that week. And the person in the hot seat can work with the leader to talk about what the agenda is going to be. So everyone's prepped for the call, and that means the call will be more effective when it does start. Another thing to do is, while the meetups should be non-negotiable, you should absolutely attend. Absence isn't acceptable. Keep talking between the meetings and the meetups. And there's lots and lots of ways you can do this. Now, you can jump on the phone. If you're really old school, you can pen them a letter. But there's probably more high-tech ways of doing it. A good way we found of keeping people in touch is using services like HipChat or Slack. Now, Slack has a charge, but HipChat is free. And what they both are is they are just instant messaging services for private groups. So we use them in our businesses. In RMP, we use Slack, and in Yellow, we use HipChat. So it just helps keep them separate. Both are great. As I said, HipChat's free. Maybe you'll use that between your group. If you're all very flash and you've got nice smartphones, maybe you can use a service like WhatsApp and have a WhatsApp group for keep the conversation going. But you'll find actually you can get just as much out between those in-between chats as you do from the regular meetings as well. And remember to review progress. So yes, you can keep talking about your weekly or fortnightly or monthly progress, but actually take a step back every so often. Do a session where you just look like, okay, where have we come in the last quarter, for example? Or what's happened in the last 6 months? Regularly review what's happened because, one, it will give you motivation to move forward. But two, actually, because we tend to just get buried in the day-to-day of life, going big picture every now and again can, yes, get you motivated, but also then helps you set bigger goals moving forward. It's something that Rob and I talk about a lot, and it's something people hardly ever do in property. But take the time to go big picture, stretch out the long-term goals, and then come back to today, because people focus on the here and now a lot. So take that time, that dedicated session to go big picture.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a real benefit of mastermind groups. It can feel like at first that you've got so much to do and this is just another thing to try and schedule, another thing to fit in. But meeting with your group can force you to think about the big picture. And by thinking about other people's situations and their challenges, it can give you a fresh perspective on your own. So it's really useful to pull yourself out of the day-to-day and have this mastermind. And within the mastermind, as Rob just said, you've got to review it to make sure you're still getting value from it. Because if you are making the time to schedule this, and everyone else is as well, you need to make sure that it's working. And if it's not, mix up the timings, mix up the format, find a way of making it work. But this has been a pretty information-dense episode. As you can probably tell, this is something that we're really enthusiastic about. We've both got a lot out of being in masterminds in the past. And we've seen masterminds in property work really effectively for members of the Property Hub Plus over the last year. So we're really keen on the concept, and we've just given you a load of information. If this is something that you're enthusiastic about too, and you want to form your own mastermind group, you might want to go back and give this episode another listen, because there is a lot of information in there. You could also go and check out the show notes at thepropertyhub.net/propertymastermind, where we're going to have some bullet points of some of the things that we've talked about. Can't capture everything in there, so you might want to give it another listen before you get a group started, but that'll certainly give you the overview. And we'll be really excited if we see on the Property Hub some groups starting to form. It'd be really great to see that. So there's a group in St Albans who meet in person every so often. That's like an informal mastermind, but it'd be great to see some more formal things popping up as well, either in person or just virtually.
Absolutely. You know, I think the masterminds, well, I don't think I know, the mastermind section of the Property Hub Plus has been the biggest success story. That and the progress journals, which I'm pleased to say are coming to the free part of the forum, because everything's becoming free. The summit, if you want to accelerate this, if you want a structured format, the summit is there for you. Go to thepropertyhub.net/summit to find out more. That will definitely help you and move you on forward. And you can work with Rob and I and other like-minded switched on people. But if you don't want to do that, we've given you all the tools to do it. You know, this episode, as Rob said, has lots of information. So we're not going, we've got this secret group and we can only show you if you pay the money to do it. We've told you, it's free. There you go. It's effort, but if you're prepared to put the effort in, you can do it for free. But if you want to join us at a very nice venue and have a very nice lunch and do it with ourselves, then you know where to go. thepropertyhub.net/summit. Resource of the week, Rob. We talked about meeting people on certain dates, but how can I remember to do that?
Good link. I imagine you've got a tool for us.
I have, Rob. How convenient. This week is a tool for Chrome. So if you are not using Chrome as your browser, why not? It's super cool. Loads of extensions, lots you can do with it. In the extensions for Chrome, so if you Google Chrome extensions, there's lots of little add-ons you can use. We've talked about them before, but a really, really useful one, if you use your calendar a lot like Rob and I, is Checker Plus for Google Drive and Checker Plus for Calendar. Now, let me talk about the calendar one first. Checker Plus for Calendar is the one I've used for the longer period of time. How I organise my day-to-day, so the bigger picture stuff's in Trello, but my day-to-day is a combination of to-do list in Trello and my calendar. And what I'll have is events that are already scheduled in my calendar, and then I'll look at my to-do list and then block out time to do certain things from my to-do list in my calendar. So I live out my calendar. But because of that, there's events happening non-stop, either the calls, the face-to-face meetings, tasks that need to be done. It's non-stop. So to help me stop missing those scheduled events, this app gives me a pop-up every time an event's due. And I can set how I want the reminders to come. It can create an alarm. It can do all different noises. It can come up at different times before the event that you can choose to have the pop-ups or not. But what I find is that I've got a set combination that works for me, and it helps me stay on track. Especially if a call's going on for a bit and I see it pop up 10 minutes before, I know I need to start thinking about wrapping that call up. I find it super useful and it's free. So if you use your calendar on a day-to-day basis, then this is a must-have. And if you use Google Drive, a previous resource of the week that we've talked about, then their new edition, Checker Plus for Google Drive, is super useful too, because it just allows you to access all the stuff in Google Drive that little bit quicker. It's just a time saver. It's not going to probably change your world as much as the calendar app, but nevertheless very useful from the same people. So we'll link to both of them in the show notes.
Yep, the links to those will be in the show notes, which once again are at thepropertyhub.net/propertymastermind. And something you might want to put in your calendar is reminding yourself to leave us an iTunes review, which some kind, many kind people have already done. And if you do, we will read it out on the show, just like this one.
It's like we have a competition to do the worst links into the next section.
We're both winners.
Yeah, there's no losers when it comes to lead-ins. Yeah. Terrible lead-ins. This comes from Spark02K, and Spark says, great work. As a newcomer to property, I found listening to Rob and Rob a delight. Great level-headed advice delivered in a friendly and concise way. A lot of great resources and recommendations for books and apps to help you be more productive in business and life on top of the property expertise they dish out. Great stuff. Hope to work with you guys in the future when I'm ready to buy my first property. Well, thank you, Spark. We look forward to talking with you. And even if we don't work with you, if you ever have any questions or need any advice, we are both very approachable.
Yes, we are. And if you do want to leave us a review of your own, you can just go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast and you'll find a link on there that will take you over to that nasty old iTunes interface, where you can do battle and somehow end up leaving us a review. So we thank you for your patience and your tenacity if you do manage to get iTunes working.
Now, Rob, if only I was a millionaire so I could build a new interface that would be better for leaving reviews.
Oh, dear. I'm so glad the show's nearly over. This is getting out of control. Yes. Next week, we're going to be talking about 20 ways to become a property millionaire. See what you did there? That might sound like a bit of a strange title, not the kind of episode title that we normally go to, but that's because we're actually taking this from The Telegraph. They had a story called 20 Ways to Become a Property Millionaire. We're going to talk through those ways, see which we agree with and which we disagree with, and we're going to throw some of our own in there as well. So this has been a very dense, information-packed episode, and the next one looks like it will be as well.
And that's what we like. So make sure you join us next week for 20 Ways to Become a Property Millionaire. I've got a feeling, Rob, for people who've never seen the podcast before and they're picking their first episodes, that title will probably draw them in more than any other. Which I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but it probably will. But I'm sure for our regular listeners, you're going to get loads out of that, because not only are we going to just comment on their points, we're going to enhance them or criticize them. So I know you'll get a lot out of that episode. That just leaves us to say, 1, thank you for listening and joining us once again. And 2, if you do want to find out more about the summit, go to thepropertyhub.net/summit, that's M, to book your place if you want to join us, if there's any left. We record this in the past, so this goes out in our future, which sounds really confusing. So I won't talk about it too much more, because we'll have to talk about the space-time continuum and Back to the Future and Marty and everything else. So we won't go there, but all we will say is if you do want to join the summit, which I promise you is in the future, then go to thepropertyhub.net/summit and we'll go there. I think it's a good time to finish, Rob.
I'm very confused. Let's say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.